Marcus Chen wiped the grease from his hands with a worn rag, squinting at the massive fusion engine sprawled across the maintenance bay floor. The deep space mining station Prometheus orbited a dying star, and everything here seemed to reflect that inevitable decay. Pipes leaked, circuits sparked, and the artificial gravity fluctuated just enough to make coffee cups slide across tables when nobody expected it. He had been the chief engineer on this forgotten outpost for 3 years, fixing what broke and jury-rigging what couldn't be fixed properly. The pay was decent, the isolation was peaceful, and nobody asked too many questions about why a former Earth Defense Corps engineer had chosen exile among the asteroids. The emergency klaxon shattered his concentration. Marcus dropped his tools and rushed to the communications array, expecting another routine distress call from a damaged mining vessel or perhaps pirates testing their defenses. Instead, his screens displayed something that made him question his sanity. A ship unlike anything in the galactic database hung motionless outside the station. It looked organic, almost grown rather than built, with sweeping curves that resembled the ribcage of some impossible beast. The hull appeared to be made from scales that shifted color from deep emerald to midnight black as the station's lights played across its surface. "Unknown vessel, this is mining station Prometheus," Marcus spoke into his headset, trying to keep his voice steady. "Please identify yourself and state your intentions." The response came not in words, but in images that flooded his mind directly. He staggered backward, clutching his head as alien thoughts pressed against his consciousness. Pain, desperate and overwhelming. Fear that tasted like copper and ash. And beneath it all, a plea so raw and urgent that it bypassed language entirely. When the mental contact ended, Marcus found himself staring at the main display screen, which now showed the interior of the alien vessel. What he saw there changed everything he thought he knew about the universe. The creature before him was magnificent and terrible. It stood nearly 3 meters tall, with a serpentine neck that curved gracefully from broad shoulders covered in scales the size of dinner plates. Its head was elongated and elegant, with large, intelligent eyes that held an ancient wisdom. Massive wings, folded against its back, suggested it could fly despite its size. Every human instinct screamed dragon, even as Marcus's rational mind insisted such things were impossible. But it was the creature's mate that truly shocked him. She lay motionless on what appeared to be a biomechanical life support system, her once brilliant scales now dull and gray. Her breathing was labored, and even through the screen, Marcus could see she was dying. The male dragon spoke, and somehow Marcus understood despite never hearing the language before. The words seemed to translate themselves in his mind, perhaps through the same mental connection that had shared the images. "Human engineer, I am Vilthros of the Drakmori. My people have watched your species for generations, studying your remarkable ability to repair what others consider broken beyond hope. My mate, Seraphina, suffers from quantum cascade failure in her bioneural matrix. Our greatest healers say she cannot be saved, but I have seen what humans accomplish when all others surrender to defeat." Marcus stared at the screen, his engineer's mind already racing despite the impossibility of the situation. I don't understand. What's a quantum cascade failure, and what makes you think I can help when your own people can't?" Valthros's massive head lowered slightly, and when he looked up, his eyes held the weight of genuine despair. "My mate's life force is stored in crystalline neural networks that exist partially in quantum space. A solar flare damaged the quantum anchors 3 cycles ago, and now her consciousness is slowly dispersing across dimensional barriers. Each moment, more of who she is fades into the void." The dragon paused, and Marcus could see him struggling with the next words. "Your species has something ours lost long ago. Where we see elegant systems that must be preserved exactly as designed, You see broken things that can be rebuilt better than before. You take impossible problems and create solutions that should not work, yet somehow do. This is why I have come to you, despite my people's warnings about human unpredictability." Marcus pulled up a chair and sat down heavily. In his years as an engineer, he had faced countless impossible problems. Engines that shouldn't run, but somehow did. Life support systems held together with spare parts and stubborn determination. But this was beyond anything in his experience. "Even if I wanted to help," he said slowly, "I don't know anything about your technology. I work with metal and circuits and fusion reactions. What you're describing sounds more like something for a scientist or a doctor." Valthros stepped aside, revealing more of his ship's interior. The walls pulsed with soft bioluminescent patterns, and Marcus could see that the entire vessel was alive in some way. Organic conduits carried streams of energy that looked like liquid starlight, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with barely contained power. "Our technology is not separate from biology as yours is," Valthros explained. "Our ships grow rather than being built. Our computers think rather than merely computing. And our medical systems require the same problem-solving skills you use to repair broken machinery, just applied to living quantum matrices instead of metal components." Marcus stood up and began pacing, a habit he had developed when facing particularly challenging repairs. "Okay, let's say I believe all this. Why me specifically? There are human engineers throughout the galaxy, many with more experience than I have." The dragon's expression became almost gentle. "Because your reputation precedes you, Marcus Chen. The mining ship captain you saved last year when his reactor was going critical. His grateful report reached many ears. The colony transport whose life support you rebuilt using spare parts from a food processor. That story has been told in a dozen systems. You see solutions where others see only problems." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "You've been watching me." "Not watching," Valthros corrected. "Listening. When one's mate is dying, one becomes very interested in stories about those who refuse to accept the impossible." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Please, human. Time grows short, and she is all I have left in this vast darkness between stars." Through the screen, Marcus could see Seraphina's condition deteriorating. Her scales had lost almost all their color, and her breathing was becoming increasingly shallow. Whatever was happening to her was accelerating. "How long does she have?" Marcus asked quietly. "Perhaps 2 of your days before the cascade becomes irreversible. After that—" Valthros couldn't finish the sentence. Marcus looked around his maintenance bay at the familiar tools and spare parts that had been his world for so long. Then he looked back at the screen, at a desperate being whose love for his mate had driven him to seek help from a species his own people apparently feared. Every rational part of his mind said this was insane. He was a mining station engineer, not some miracle worker. The technology involved was so far beyond his understanding that he might as well try to repair a rainbow with a screwdriver. The smart thing to do would be to wish them luck and send them on their way. But Marcus had never been particularly smart about choosing the easy path. "I'll need to see her condition firsthand," he said finally, "and I'll need access to whatever technical information you have about these quantum neural networks. I can't promise anything, but I can promise I'll try." Valthros's eyes brightened with the first spark of hope Marcus had seen in them. "You will come aboard my ship? If you're willing to trust a human with your mate's life, then I'm willing to trust you with mine." Marcus was already moving toward his personal storage locker, pulling out his portable diagnostic kit and the specialized tools he had accumulated over years of impossible repairs. "Just promise me one thing. Anything. If this doesn't work, if I can't save her, you won't blame yourself for not trying everything. Sometimes things break in ways that can't be fixed, no matter how much we want to fix them." Vilethros nodded solemnly. I understand, human engineer. But know this. Hope is all I have left, and you have given me more of it than I have felt in cycles. As Marcus prepared to leave the only home he had known for years, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to attempt something that would either prove the incredible potential of human ingenuity or demonstrate its tragic limitations. Either way, he knew there was no turning back. The dragon's ship began extending what looked like a docking tube toward the station, and Marcus realized he was about to board a living vessel to attempt repairs on a dying mind using technology that existed partially in quantum space. Just another day in the life of a mining station engineer, he told himself wryly, and tried not to think about all the ways this could go catastrophically wrong. The moment Marcus stepped aboard Vilethros' ship, he knew he had entered a realm beyond his comprehension. The docking tube sealed behind him with a sound like a gentle sigh, and he found himself standing in a corridor that seemed to breathe. The walls pulsed with soft rhythms, and the floor beneath his feet felt warm and slightly yielding, like walking on living tissue. Vilethros waited for him, and up close the dragon was even more imposing. His scales caught the bioluminescent light and reflected it in patterns that seemed almost hypnotic. When he moved, it was with fluid grace that made Marcus feel clumsy by comparison. The atmosphere has been adjusted for your physiology, Vilethros said, noting Marcus's slight hesitation. You may breathe freely. Marcus took a tentative breath and found the air surprisingly pleasant, with a faint sweetness that reminded him of flowers after rain. Your ship is incredible. How long did it take to grow? Serafina and I shaped her together over the course of 50 of your years. She is part of our family. Vilethros' expression darkened, which makes what I must now ask of you even more difficult. As they walked deeper into the ship, Marcus began to understand what the dragon meant. The vessel wasn't just alive, it was sentient. He could sense its awareness watching him, evaluating this strange human who had come aboard to help its creators. Occasionally, he caught glimpses of chambers filled with flowing energy streams and crystalline structures that hummed with contained power. They entered what Marcus assumed was the medical bay, though it looked more like the inside of a giant flower. Serafina lay in the center, surrounded by tendrils of living light that monitored her vital signs and attempted to stabilize her condition. Seeing her in person was devastating. What Vilethros had described as a quantum cascade failure looked to Marcus like watching someone slowly fade from existence. Show me the technical specifications, Marcus said, forcing himself to focus on the problem rather than the tragedy. Vilethros gestured, and the air filled with three-dimensional diagrams that hurt Marcus's eyes to look at directly. The information seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially somewhere else, shifting between dimensions in ways that made his brain ache. Your neural matrices, Marcus said slowly, studying the displays. They're not just biological computers. They're consciousness storage devices that exist across multiple realities simultaneously. Correct. The quantum anchors maintain the connection between her consciousness and her physical form. When the solar flare damaged them, the connection became unstable. Her mind is now drifting between dimensional layers, and each layer that loses cohesion takes part of who she is with it. Marcus pulled out his diagnostic equipment and began scanning the quantum anchors. His instruments weren't designed for this type of analysis, but he had learned long ago to improvise. The readings made no conventional sense, showing energy patterns that seemed to fold in on themselves and exist in mathematical impossibilities. The cascade is following a predictable pattern, he muttered, more to himself than to Vilethros. Each failure creates resonance that destabilizes the next anchor. It's like a chain reaction, but in quantum space. Our healers attempted to stop the cascade by reinforcing the remaining anchors, but the damage was too extensive. They concluded that the pattern could not be reversed. Marcus looked up from his scanner. They tried to fix the system by making it stronger. Yes. Is that not the logical approach? For the first time since boarding the ship, Marcus smiled. That's where human engineering differs from everyone else's. Sometimes the best way to fix something isn't to make it stronger. Sometimes you have to make it weaker in exactly the right way. Valthros tilted his massive head. I do not understand. Marcus began connecting his portable equipment to the ship's bio-neural interface, hoping his jury-rigged adapters would work. Your healers saw a cascade failure and tried to stop it by reinforcing what was left. But what if the cascade isn't the problem? What if it's the solution that's been interrupted? The dragon's eyes widened. You suggest deliberately accelerating the failure? Not accelerating, redirecting. Marcus's equipment finally synced with the alien systems, and data began flowing across his displays in patterns he was slowly beginning to understand. Look at this resonance pattern. The cascade isn't random. It's trying to establish a new equilibrium, but the remaining anchors are preventing it from completing the cycle. Marcus stood up and began pacing around Seraphina's still form, studying the quantum anchor positions. In human engineering, we have a saying, if you can't fix it, feature it. Your mate's consciousness isn't being destroyed by the cascade. It's being redistributed across dimensional layers in a pattern that your anchors can't accommodate. But if we remove the remaining anchors, won't her consciousness disperse completely? Not if we replace them with something better. Marcus was already pulling components from his kit, devices designed for completely different purposes that he was about to repurpose in ways their creators never imagined. I'm going to build new anchors, not biological ones that try to hold her consciousness in one-dimensional layer, but hybrid biomechanical ones that let it flow naturally across all the layers it's trying to reach. Valthros watched in fascination as Marcus began constructing what looked like a collection of random parts connected by fiber optic cables and quantum processors from his portable scanner. That device should not function. The components are incompatible. Incompatible according to whose specifications? Marcus connected another improvised circuit. Human engineering isn't about following the rules. It's about making new rules when the old ones don't work. As Marcus worked, he began to understand something profound about the difference between human and Drachmori approaches to problem solving. The dragons created beautiful, elegant systems that worked perfectly within their intended parameters. But when those systems encountered problems outside their design specifications, the dragons tried to force them back into the original pattern. Humans, on the other hand, had been breaking things and fixing them wrong for so long that they had developed an instinctual ability to see beyond original design limitations. Where the dragons saw a failed quantum anchor system, Marcus saw the raw materials for something entirely new. There, he said finally, stepping back from his improvised creation. It's not pretty, but it should work. These hybrid anchors will let her consciousness exist across multiple dimensional layers simultaneously instead of trying to force it back into a single layer. Valthros examined the device with obvious skepticism. You built this in 2 hours using salvaged components. Our greatest engineers spent cycles designing the original anchors. And they did beautiful work, Marcus admitted, but they designed them for normal operation. I designed these for the specific failure mode your mate is experiencing. Sometimes the right tool for the job isn't the most elegant one. Marcus began the delicate process of replacing the damaged anchors with his hybrid versions. The ship's bio-neural interface adapted to the new components with surprising flexibility, and Marcus realized that Drachmori technology was far more adaptable than their conservative approach to problem-solving suggested. As the final hybrid anchor came online, the quantum cascade suddenly stabilized. But instead of collapsing back to a single-dimensional layer, Seraphina's consciousness began to establish presence across multiple layers simultaneously. "By the ancient stars," Velthros breathed, "she's not just stable, she's more connected to quantum space than she was before the accident." Marcus monitored his improvised systems, watching energy patterns that showed Seraphina's consciousness expanding across dimensions he couldn't even properly perceive. The cascade wasn't trying to destroy her neural matrix. It was trying to evolve it. Your original anchors were preventing that evolution. Seraphina's eyes fluttered open, and when she looked at Marcus, he saw awareness that seemed to extend beyond normal perception. When she spoke, her voice seemed to come from multiple dimensions at once. "Human engineer," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated in his bones. "You have not simply saved my life. You have shown me worlds beyond our previous understanding." Velthros rushed to her side, his relief palpable. "My beloved, how do you feel?" "I feel expanded, connected to spaces between spaces that I never knew existed." She turned to Marcus with an expression of wonder. "Your species truly sees possibilities where we see only limitations." Marcus packed his equipment, feeling exhausted but satisfied. "I just applied basic engineering principles to a quantum biology problem. The hard part was realizing that the failure was actually an upgrade trying to happen." "You speak as if this is simple," Velthros said. "But what you have done challenges everything my people believe about the nature of consciousness and reality." "Maybe that's the real difference between humans and other species," Marcus replied. "We don't believe in the nature of anything being fixed. We believe everything can be improved, rebuilt, or repurposed if you're willing to think about it differently." As Marcus prepared to return to his mining station, he realized this encounter had changed him as much as it had changed Seraphina. He had always thought of himself as just a mechanic who was good at fixing broken things, but perhaps human engineering was something more profound than he had ever imagined. 3 months after Marcus returned to mining station Prometheus, he was still trying to convince himself the entire encounter had been real. The only proof was a small crystalline device Velthros had given him as payment, something the dragon called a quantum resonance amplifier that made his engineering scanner capable of analyzing dimensional stress patterns. Marcus had used it twice to prevent reactor failures that should have been impossible to predict, but he told himself it was just an advanced piece of alien technology. That illusion shattered when every communication array in the system suddenly activated simultaneously. The message came through on frequencies that shouldn't exist, transmitted through quantum channels that human technology wasn't supposed to be able to access. It was Velthros, but his mental voice reached not just Marcus, but every human within a dozen star systems. "People of Earth and her colonies, I am Velthros of the Drachmori, and I bring word of great import. Your species has long been observed by the elder races of this galaxy, and until now, you have been deemed too unpredictable and dangerous for contact. Today, that assessment changes." Marcus dropped his tools and rushed to the communications center, where he found every screen displaying the same impossible sight. Hundreds of Drachmori ships had appeared throughout human space, their biomechanical hulls gleaming like living jewels against the stars. But they weren't attacking or threatening. They were simply waiting. 3 months ago," Velthros continued, "one of your engineers accomplished something that our greatest minds deemed impossible. Using primitive tools and salvaged components, he repaired not just a failing quantum consciousness, but evolved it beyond its original limitations. In doing so, he demonstrated a fundamental truth about your species that we had failed to understand." The image shifted to show Seraphina, but she was transformed. Her scales now shifted through colors that didn't exist in normal space, and her eyes held depths that seemed to contain entire galaxies. When she moved, reality itself seemed to bend slightly around her, as if she existed in more dimensions than the three everyone else was limited to. "The gift your engineer gave me was not simply extended life," she said, her voice carrying across dimensional barriers to reach human minds directly. "It was transformation into something greater than I was before. Through his refusal to accept limitation, he showed me pathways to existence that my people believed impossible." Marcus stared at the screen in growing amazement. He had thought he was simply jury-rigging a solution to keep her consciousness stable. He had no idea he was fundamentally altering the nature of her existence. Valthros appeared beside his mate, and Marcus could see that he too had been changed. While not as dramatically transformed as Seraphina, there was something in his bearing that suggested expanded awareness. "For millennia, the Dracmori have been trapped by our own perfection," Valthros explained. "Our technology is elegant and our systems are flawless, but they cannot evolve beyond their original design. We became so focused on preserving what we had created that we forgot how to create anything new." The scene shifted to show human settlements throughout the galaxy, mining operations, research stations, colonial cities, and trading posts. In every location, Marcus could see the characteristic signs of human engineering. Systems that shouldn't work but did. Repairs that violated manufacturer specifications but functioned better than the originals, and innovations that combined technologies in ways no designer had ever intended. "Your species has what we have lost," Seraphina said. "The ability to see beyond the intended function of anything. You take our elegant systems and make them better by making them imperfect. You find solutions by refusing to accept that problems are permanent." Marcus watched in stunned silence as the broadcast continued. Other human engineers appeared on screen, people he had never heard of, who had apparently performed similar miracles of improvised innovation. A terraforming engineer who had saved a dying world by reversing the polarity of its atmospheric processors. A ship mechanic who had prevented a war by rewiring a weapons system to function as a communication array. A mining technician who had turned a collapsing asteroid into a stable habitat for 10,000 refugees. Each of these humans accomplished something our finest minds declared impossible, Valthros said. Not through superior technology or greater knowledge, but through a fundamentally different approach to problem solving. Where we see elegant systems that must be preserved, you see raw materials for something better. The broadcast shifted to show Dracmori scientists working alongside human engineers. Marcus watched in amazement as dragon precision combined with human improvisation created technologies that surpassed anything either species had achieved alone. Starships that could navigate through folded space, medical devices that could heal quantum-level consciousness damage, and terraforming systems that could create worlds more perfect than nature had ever intended. The elder races have concluded that humanity represents an evolutionary leap in problem-solving capability, Seraphina continued. Your ability to innovate beyond existing parameters is not a sign of primitive technology, as we once believed. It is evidence of a cognitive flexibility that our species has never developed. Marcus felt his legs give out, and he collapsed into a chair as the implications hit him. Every impossible repair he had ever made, every jury-rigged solution that had worked when it shouldn't have, every time he had looked at broken equipment and seen opportunity instead of obstacles, all of it had been observed and evaluated by alien civilizations that had been silently judging humanity's worthiness for contact. Today marks the beginning of a new era, Valthros announced. The Galactic Concord has voted to extend full membership to humanity, not as junior partners to be guided and supervised, but as equals whose unique capabilities are essential for our continued evolution. The broadcast showed massive space stations being constructed, joint research facilities where human engineers worked alongside alien scientists, and exploration ships crewed by mixed-species teams venturing into uncharted regions of the galaxy. But know this, Serafina added, her transformed features radiating both warmth and authority. This invitation comes with great responsibility. The galaxy faces challenges that have stymied the elder races for eons. Star systems dying from quantum decay, ancient machines whose purposes have been forgotten but whose failure could devastate entire sectors, cosmic phenomena that threaten the stability of reality itself. We need human engineering to solve these problems, Valthros said. We need minds that refuse to accept the impossible and see broken things as opportunities for improvement. We need the species that looks at failing quantum consciousness and builds better anchors from spare parts. The images shifted to show the challenges waiting. Massive stellar engines that had been maintaining the stability of entire star clusters for millions of years were beginning to fail. Ancient defense networks protecting inhabited worlds from cosmic radiation were breaking down. Space-time itself was developing stress fractures in regions where multiple civilizations had pushed the boundaries of physics too far. Your species will not face these challenges alone, Serafina assured the human audience. Every innovation you develop will be shared with all member species. Every problem you solve will benefit every world in the conquered, and every impossible thing you accomplish will push the boundaries of what we all believed possible. Marcus looked out through the station's observation port at the Drakmori ships positioned throughout the system. As he watched, human vessels began approaching them. Mining ships, cargo haulers, passenger transports, and military vessels all converged on the alien craft in the first official contact between their species. Engineer Marcus Chen of Mining Station Prometheus. Valthros's voice spoke directly into his mind through the quantum resonance amplifier. You began this transformation with a simple act of compassion and an engineer's refusal to accept defeat. How does it feel to know that your jury-rigged repair work has changed the course of galactic history? Marcus touched the crystalline device on his workbench, still hardly believing any of this was real. I just fixed what was broken. That's what engineers do. Exactly, came Serafina's voice, warm with affection. You see problems and create solutions. You see failure and build improvement. You refuse to accept that anything is beyond repair. This is why the galaxy needs humanity. As Marcus watched the first mixed crews board human vessels bound for joint research stations, he realized that his simple life as a mining station engineer was about to become much more complicated. But for the first time in years, he felt genuinely excited about the future. The galaxy was broken in ways no one had been able to fix. Ancient systems were failing, cosmic phenomena were threatening entire civilizations, and problems that had existed for millions of years were finally demanding solutions. It sounded like a job for human engineers. Marcus smiled and began packing his tools. There was work to be done, and apparently, the entire galaxy was counting on humanity's gift for impossible repairs. He had spent years fixing things on a forgotten mining station, but now he had the chance to help fix the universe itself. It was, he thought with typical human understatement, going to be one hell of an interesting challenge.